For today's show, we bring you a very special segment. It is filled with many stories of historical significance. It is a story of a little girl born in a displacement camp in Germany, a story of her parents' survival through the Holocaust, a journey of coming to America, rejoining family, but being conflicted by the discrimination ever present in the United States. It is the story of a little girl who saw Dr. King talk about a dream, a girl being so young and unaware of the history happening in front of her own eyes. To honor her parents' legacy, she continues dreaming of equality for all people. A woman who saw the poverty in her community and constructed a peace garden, a garden flourishing with plants tall and small, and with seeds of many cultures. This is a story of one woman, but the huge history behind her. This is the story of Annie Greenfeld. Say what the name of this place is and where is it located?
Okay, it's the Peace Garden at Martin Luther King Jr. Park at 1950 Lemon Avenue in Long Beach, California.
And
this is a labor of love from the community for the community. Two community organizations came together and wrote a grant, a Neighborhood Partners Program grant, and that's how we started the garden. And then we employed kids through the Hire a Youth program from the central area, and we built the garden.
So can you describe all the different kinds of plants you guys have here?
Sure, we have broccoli, kale. We actually have two different kinds of kale. This is the Russian red, and this over here is the regular curly leaf kale. This is delicious. Well, the Learning Center has a blackboard, and it has 7 rows of benches. It's just to have classes not only for planting and for healthy living, but also leadership classes.
And it's out here outdoors under the sun?
Outdoors, yes.
Next to the plants?
Yes. And in the summertime, the plants flourish, and you just can't imagine how peaceful it is here. When I need to have a few minutes, I come in here, and I just sit here and do nothing. I bring lunch here sometimes, so it's really nice.
And you have all these signs up, right? Can you read
The
those
signs
Yeah.
are all sayings from Martin Luther King Jr., and they were done by seniors at the Willow Wellness Center.
Can you read that sign for me over there? It says on the left, that Martin Luther King.
From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And the other one says peace, tolerance, caring, unity, and love.
So, were you involved in the civil rights movement?
I was, actually. At 15, I lived in New Jersey then. I grew up in New Jersey. And one of my best friend's brothers, who was older, I guess he was like 19, went to Rutgers. And when MLK went to Washington for the I Have a Dream speech and the march, he took us with him. And we actually marched with Martin Luther King Jr. Fabulous experience. There were so many people there. It was just fabulous. Kind of almost like the hippie movement at Woodstock.
When you were there, did you realize the fact that you were witnessing history?
No, never occurred to me. My name is Annie Greenfeld, and that's still my maiden name. I have never changed my name because I didn't want the name Greenfeld to die with my parents. So I was born on February 4th, 1948 in Ulm, Germany. I'm Jewish, and the Jewish people have been, there's been so much prejudice and bias and so much hate against the Jews. I think maybe we understand the civil rights movement a lot more than other people do because we've been dealing with it for so long, and it's been ingrained in us, from birth, for generations before us. My parents were part of the Holocaust. My father was in the Hungarian army, and my mother was, she wasn't in a concentration camp, but she was a slave to the German soldiers. So she went through lots of horrible things, and I didn't even know about them until after she passed away. I read her papers. She kept like journals on it, and I was just, she never wanted to discuss it, and my father never wanted to discuss it. It was incredible just to see what they went through. My father was married before, and before he married my mother, and his wife and his little son, who was about 3 years old, were killed in Auschwitz.
Where did your parents meet?
At a displaced persons camp in Germany after the war. So they got married in 1946 at the displaced persons camp. In fact, yesterday I found old pictures from then. This was their wedding.
Yeah, so we're looking at black and white photos of your parents here,
Yeah.
of their marriage at the camp.
1946. This was on August 27th, 1946.
Your mom's so cute. Your mom has this like chubby, plump face.
Yeah.
In this
yeah.
little white dress.
Yeah,
next to your
she
father.
was cute.
How old was your mother at the time?
Let's see. They got married in 46. She was born in 21. So.
Do the math. It's 25.
Yeah, 25. Yeah, and this was actually, I don't know how they even managed to make me, because they're, the homeless shelters around with all the cots. Well, that's how the displaced persons camp was set up.
Yeah, because looking at this picture, I see
Look
that
at all the people there. All from the camp.
There's a circle of people around the bride and groom, which are your parents, and your parents are under. Looks like they're taking their vows under a huppah.
It's a huppah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's in the Jewish religion. You always get married under a huppah. Yeah, and my dad. You can see my dad was 15 years older than my mom, because this is his second marriage. And here's dinner time.
That was the wedding, or?
Dinner time. No, just dinner time.
Oh, okay. At the camp.
Yeah, at the camp. And some of the same people are in these pictures.
Oh, wow. So this is like years later.
This is 72, and this is probably around the same time. But some of the same people that were here are in the picture. Where is she? Like, see, this lady is her.
Oh, wow.
And I knew a lot of these people. Where's the...
So this is a picture of her as a little girl with blonde hair. Having dinner at the camp.
See, that's my mom.
Right.
My dad. Where's the other one?
And then this is the same girl with white hair in the 70s.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they were friends for many, many years. It's just crazy, all the people. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else. And that's my mom and me in Germany.
Still at the camp?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was born at the camp. I don't know. They all went to different places from Germany. They had to wait at the displaced persons camp to, they had a choice. They could come to the United States or they could go to Australia. My mother wanted to go to Australia. My dad wanted to come here, so he won. And a couple of months before he got here, his brother lived here already, and that was his main purpose for coming here, because this is where his family was. And a couple of months before we got here, his brother died.
Your parents are from Hungary, and then
My dad was in the Hungarian army.
right. Okay.
So he was fighting, and my mother was taken by the German soldiers in Hungary to Germany, and that's where they met.
Do you have any idea of, like, did your parents ever tell you what, like, life was like before the Nazis in Hungary?
They did. They came from big families. I think my dad had 4 sisters and 2 brothers. My mom had 1 brother only and 3 sisters. And they were always short on food. So they always had to make do. And growing up, I couldn't understand why my mother kept saying, eat, you have to eat everything on your plate, because she never had enough to eat. So that it kind of tells me what was going on in her mind before and after. It's just absolutely incredible that she never ever told me what she went through in the war. Nobody discussed it. Not any of these people that we all met again in New Jersey, and that's where I grew up. None of these people said anything about what happened in the war. Absolutely incredible.
And so then, when the war happened, your father went off to fight.
Yes. Yeah, he was in the Hungarian army, and then he went to Germany to fight. And that's when his wife was taken to Auschwitz, and his son, and killed in the, one of the gas chambers there. And, after the war is when he met my mother. I think he met her in 45, and they got married in 46.
And so what was, your mom was in Hungary also, so...
She was taken by the German soldiers, and she was their slave, and taken to Germany.
Yeah, I know it's personal, so just, I mean, like, completely tell me, like, if you're ever uncomfortable with answering certain questions or anything like that? 'Cause I know,
No.
okay.
I mean, I think it's important for people to understand what they went through during the Holocaust. I mean, my mother was repeatedly raped by the German soldiers. So when I was about 6 or 7 years old, my mother had a nervous breakdown. And I think it was all the anxiety from all that finally caught up to her. And she kind of wasn't all there for a couple of years, so it was a little difficult for my dad. Of course, my dad was my angel. He worked really hard, and when he came home, he took me out for dinner, he got me ready for school. He did everything, that a mother and father should do. He did that on his own, so.
Are there any other experiences that you found out about your mom? She didn't talk to him about.
She didn't.
With you, but you
I
found
found
out
it.
through her journals.
Well, through her journals and her paperwork, my parents both filed for restitution from the German government. Because if you were in Germany, in a displaced persons camp, in a concentration camp, in the army, after the war, so many years after the war, I think it was in the 60s, when they finally got their restitution. So this was a process of 6 or 7 years where they had to document everything that happened to them.
What's restitution?
You would kind of call it like a retirement or something like that, but it's from the German government. They were paid a certain amount of money every month as their restitution for suffering the way they did in the camps.
And where was during the war? Where was your mom kept at? Was she
She was
in the offices?
in the offices, and and she slept in the camps. So she was just taken out of the camps when she was needed.
Was she ever needed to do like certain kinds of
She did manual labor.
And stuff
She did no. I don't. I did not read anything about torture except the rapes, and they were numerous soldiers. So it wasn't just one.
What kind of labor was she ordered to do?
Laundry, washing floors, just cleaning toilets, and it was at a concentration camp.
In what city do you remember?
It was no. See, she never said what city it was in.
But it was in Germany.
It was in Germany, yes. Yes, and they were forced to wear the bands with the Jewish star on them. I don't have a whole lot of pictures left, but these are the ones that I found, because they're all packed away, and I'm just going through all my paperwork so I can see if I actually kept any of my mother's papers.
Are you going to publish them, or?
I kind of want to put together something. I think it's important for people to know, people who have been taught that the Holocaust never happened. I think it's important for them to see and to realize the torture that these people went through. And just so you know, out of my father's family and my mother's family that were left in Hungary, we are the only ones who did not convert to Catholicism.
Why did so much of your family
Because
convert?
They thought that converting to Catholicism would save them and their families. So we're the only ones who did not. My father absolutely refused.
Maintaining your identity. And so
Yeah.
they converted during the war?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they weren't in my father's family. Some of them were not in concentration camps. So they were still in Hungary, but that's where they converted because they thought it would save everybody's life.
And did it save their life?
Yeah. Yeah, it did.
At a cost?
At a cost. Yes, because they never really believed in Catholicism.
So when you came to the United States, you were about how old?
I was just about 2 years old.
What do you remember from the camp? Do you have any memories of the camp? I know you were really young.
I was very, very young. I just remember a lot of people being around all the time. That's the only thing I remember. You were never alone. There was always somebody to talk to play with. Always somebody around. I just couldn't imagine when we came to the United States and we had our own apartment. Well, where are all the kids? Where's everybody I used to talk to? It was very strange.
In child research, they talk about there's a sort of subtle feelings of your past, and so when you remember that feeling you had as a 2-year-old, what feelings comes up?
Just the fact that my mother was very unhappy. I think she was so scared. And I don't ever really remember my mother being happy at all. I mean, there were times, of course, different occasions where she was happy, but I think she's much happier now.
Where's she at?
She passed away years ago, but I think she's in a better place now than she was then.
At the camp, do you remember what things looked like? Like what color was the rooms and stuff like that? Or
No, I mean,
we're going way back.
I think they were all pretty bland. I mean, this is just the tables where they used to dine. You can see in one of this one you can see them sitting there.
Yeah.
And
This looks.
I mean, look at all the people.
Yeah. So this is a dining room. This looks kind of like luxurious for like when I think of a camp. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's like a lot of problems, but I just picture
Yeah.
just kind of.
Yeah, it's a nice picture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what.
It's a nice picture, and this was.
Looks like
this
people were
looks
happy
nice.
at times at the camp.
Well, I think they were happy to be alive. So I think they felt like, you know, once my dad came to this country, he wanted nothing but to become an American citizen. 5 years to the day that he arrived here is when he became an American citizen. That's all he ever wanted.
Did the discrimination stop in the United States?
You know, I don't think it ever stopped. And I think it's worse in California than it was in New York and New Jersey area. Because most of the Jews that came over settled in the New York, New Jersey area. You know, all along the eastern seaboard. So I think the discrimination and the bias is much worse here.
Oh, so wasn't it as bad in the East Coast? Or?
No, I just remember I was, I think I was 18 or 19 years old, and after high school, I wanted to work, and I went for a job. You know, the whole interview process, testing, to Western Electric. And I was always pretty smart. My parents couldn't afford to send me to college. So I figured, let me go get a job, and I wanted something with, you know, in corporate America where, you know, I could rise up. I was top in all the testing, top in all the interviews, and I didn't get the job. And when I asked them why, they said it was because I was Jewish. And I was 18 years old then.
Did that make you doubt America? Or have questioned things?
It made me question, you know, marching with Martin Luther King when I was 15, and here it is 3 years later, and I can't get a job because I'm Jewish. I mean, I didn't understand how people could be so biased. I didn't understand that.
I mean, your father seemed like very passionate about becoming a citizen. Were there times where he had doubts as well, or?
No.
He was very happy.
Yeah, he was happy because he was here. He had some of his family here, and even though he didn't get to see his brother, he got to see his nephew, and you know, his nephew's kids, and we were a very tight-knit family. My mother had no family here. I love to go again to the Museum of Tolerance in LA. It amazes me because when I was younger, religion wasn't that important to me. You know, my life was more important. I wanted to have fun and do things because my mother was always sad. Now, being a Jew has become one of the most important things in my life. And making sure that nobody else suffers because of their race, color, ethnicity, sexual preference. I don't think that bias is a healthy thing, and we keep making the same mistakes over again. And I realize that there's a saying, history repeats itself, but could we just stop the bad stuff now? We don't need to repeat that.
Seeing especially the discrimination that you saw against African Americans in the United States, what was some of the stuff that you saw that maybe disturbed you or made you feel conflicted about the promises that the United States?
We used to go down, my parents and I used to drive down to Florida every year. And when we were driving down, I'd see on the sides of the road when you got to Georgia, it was horrendous the way the African Americans were made to live in squalor. I mean, you couldn't walk from your front door to the road without going through mud and muck and swamp. It was horrible.
What did the houses look like?
They were falling apart. They were all falling down. It just amazed me. And I used to try to not look. It just made me sick.
What was it that attracted you to Dr. King?
Because he wanted for, not only for African Americans, he wanted for everybody to be at peace and everybody not to fight each other and not to hate each other.
Is there any other activities you did in the civil rights movement?
I went to a lot of protests, any protests that were in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, even Washington, D.C. I went back there years after that. But it wasn't that important to me at the time that it occurred. It became more and more important. And, a few months later, when Kennedy was shot, it was only, 3 months? Because it was August when we were in Washington, D.C., marching with Martin Luther King Jr., and then in November of '63 is when JFK was shot. And I think JFK being shot kind of woke me up, because it wasn't happening to a black man. It wasn't happening to a Jew. So if you really think about it, there's hate all over the world.
Was discrimination against you or your family pretty frequent in the United States? Or?
Yes. I can tell you one story where I think I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade in New Jersey. This one kid, I don't know, his brother was our paper boy. And his brother was huge. I was a little kid. He looked huge to me. But this one kid, and I remember his name was Tony. I don't remember his last name. But he was in my class, and he would always call me a dirty Jew. He would call me kike. And he would always make references. Well, I took it, and I took it. One day, I was almost at home, and he called me a dirty Jew, and I lost it. I kicked the crap out of him. And there's all my friends around. I kicked the crap out of him. I took him, and I was banging his head on the sidewalk. And somebody finally pulled me off of him. And he ran home, and later on, I didn't tell my parents. Oh my God, they would be horrified if they knew that I was in a fight. And after dinner, our doorbell rings. So my mother answers the door, and I'm right there with her. And there's our paper boy, and he said, and he had his little brother with him. And I thought, this is it. This is it. I'm going to get my butt beat. Well, he stood there and made his little brother apologize to me and apologize to my parents for putting us through that. And I was just there like, what? What just happened here? And after that was all over with, my parents thanked him, and I got my butt beat for being in a fight.
By your parents?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
By my mother.
By your mother?
Not my father. My father would never.
Yeah.
I've been working in the Long Beach community since 1999, since I moved into Wrigley. I never worked in the community before then. Ever.
What catalyzed you to get involved?
Well, I moved from, the peninsula in Long Beach, how beautiful it is. I moved to Wrigley because I couldn't afford to buy a house on the peninsula. So I bought one in Wrigley, Oh my God, you have to work so hard just to live in Wrigley. It was horrible. And the only thing I could think of doing was to try to make it better.
What was difficult about living in Wrigley?
Very close. I mean, you could hear people think almost. I lived right next to an apartment building. There were shootings in front of my house. There was garbage all over the streets. I mean, I can't tell you how many cleanups we've done. I just kept getting more and more involved to try to make Wrigley a better place. And for a while it worked. Up until we had that huge reduction in police. And now it's back to the way it was. It's not a pretty place to live.
What are some of the other things you've done in the community?
Started the neighborhood advisory group, which is still going.
What is that?
It's the South Wrigley Neighborhood Advisory Group. It's just a community group. And right now what we've done is we've received a grant for monument signs on Pacific Avenue. And I'm doing the tile work for the sign. I just love doing things with my hands.
That explains all the gardening in different cities,
well,
parts of the city.
And I have my garden at home too.
On an average week, how many gardens do you step foot in and get your hands dirty in?
Well, in my garden at home every day, this one and the one on Pacific Avenue, I helped start that. There's a few. You know, I went through the neighborhood leadership program. I'm a graduate of that in 2003. So I've really dug my heels into Long Beach, and I can't seem to leave.
What is it that gets you, why do you feel it's important to get involved in the community?
Because I want it to be better. I want everybody to be at peace. I don't know that I'm going to be able to make a difference, but, you know, if I teach people, if I teach the youth, somebody will make a difference. Somebody that I have touched will make a difference.
What made you want to build a garden in Long Beach? This garden?
Because, well, actually, Dee Andrews wanted a garden here. And the only way the city couldn't afford to build it. The only way we could do it is for community groups to write the grant and manage it and actually, you know, make sure it runs properly. Two organizations, it's the Central Neighborhood Advisory Committee and the South Wrigley Neighborhood Advisory Group, came together, and that was in 2010 is when we opened the garden, when we signed the grant. And we're still working together on this garden. We had never worked together before. And there's all different ethnicities, different races, and we're still working together.
So what do we see in the Latino plot? What kind of plants are growing there?
Well, there's jalapenos, tomatoes, all different kinds of ethnic foods.
And what grows in the African American plot?
Collard greens, some kale, you know, lots of greens.
Which other ones
tomatoes.
Are there?
Well, this plot right behind us is the police department plot.
The Guardian's garden.
Yes. And we just plant whatever, and this is for the community. The other gardeners get to take some of their vegetables home, but some of them have to go to the community. So they get to take half of their stuff home. The other half, you know, we have giveaways. We probably should be doing one in the end of March, beginning of April. And people go home with bundles of vegetables. We bundle them all up, we cut them down, and we actually feed people. And we don't charge them. Nobody pays for a plot here. In most community gardens, they charge $15, $20 every 6 months. Nobody pays here. This is a true community garden. We don't want anybody to pay a dime. This is to feed the hungry, to feed the community.
You said there's a Cambodian plot.
Yeah.
And what grows there?
There's garlic, there's mustard greens. I think a lot of the culture is not being taught. And I think we need to show people how we have repeated the past and how bad it is to continuously repeat it. History doesn't have to repeat itself. You just have to remember.
Do you think it's getting better?
No, I don't. I don't. Because there are still a lot of people that hate Jews, a lot of people that hate blacks, a lot of people that hate Hispanics. It doesn't seem to be getting any better. It seems to be getting different, but not better.
I hear you. Tell me, what's the significance of this garden to you?
To me,
what does this garden represent to Anne Greenfeld?
it represents all the different ethnicities and races working together to create peace.
And
it just seems appropriate that it's in Martin Luther King Jr. Park.
why is it important that the stories be retold over and over?
Well, it's
Stories
history.
of the Holocaust.
It's
stories of the
history.
past.
And I thought, instead of repeating our mistakes, if you just remember the mistakes, it'll get you past it, and you won't have the prejudice in the world. You need to not forget. A lot of people just, when something bad happens to them, all they want to do is forget about it. Put it out of your mind. Well, but that's not going to help you. You got to keep it in your mind so that you remember what not to do and to do things better. That's what you have to do. You don't dwell on something. You just want to make everything a little bit better every single day.
Is there anything else that I missed or anything that you want to say?
Well, I do want to say something.
Awesome, yeah, please.
I want to say that this garden was not built by one person. It took a village. And it took youth. And the youth worked their tails off. We won, actually, the Peace Garden won in 2011 a Neighborhoods USA award for second place in the multi-neighborhood category. We actually raised enough money to take 3 of our youth and 3 of us to go to Alaska to compete.
You got second place.
We got second place. And this is nationwide. The youth, some of the youth had never been out of Long Beach. We took a Cambodian youth who had never been out of Long Beach. It's the only place he knew. It opened his eyes. And now he's not in Long Beach anymore. He's somewhere else, but he's got a better perspective of life. I think, each ethnicity kind of tries to keep it all in a box, keep themselves in a box. And, the only thing that matters are Latinos. The only thing that matters are blacks. The only thing that matters are Cambodians. And I think if we put them all together, we'd have such a nice rainbow of people.
A nice, diverse garden.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing here. But it does take a village.